We are Rogue Media Sports.
Yeah, baby. It is the Cam Show. It's Rogue Media Sports Network. It's the Colt Brennan Memorial Studio. It's Scotty S. firing up the mothership. I just don't want to say Wheels of Steel. I'm never going to do that.
You
Scotty,
can say whatever you want. It's your show.
He does the Wheels of Steel, and it pisses me off. He does it every day.
Yeah, you can be
It
different.
annoys me.
You've got your own thing.
See, the problem...
It's your name on the banner.
The problem with this, though, is it is my name on the show. And I don't really want to talk. You see where my issue is here.
I do.
It's my show. It's me. I just don't. I'll talk about the Bruins. Fine. You fucking twist my arm. I'll talk about the Bruins. I'll talk about the Bruins in a minute. I had something else profound I was going to bring up. What was it? We were just talking Baylor stuff. It wasn't Baylor. What was... Oh, this story I just read about the 94-year-old woman. This 94-year-old woman from Iowa is retiring from a job she has had for 75 years. And it's this great heartfelt news story. And I'm like, we got to stop hyping that up. Nothing really against her, but we got to stop hyping that up. You should not be working until you're 94, ever. And you should not be working at the same place for 75 years. Should not happen. Like, that is ridiculous, man.
So remind us what year she started.
1949. 1949 she started.
It's a different world.
I mean, yes, Scotty. Like, she was getting like a 20-year silver watch when man was landing on the moon. You know what I mean? Like, from Iowa, I was literally thinking, like, when were Iowa schools like desegregated? You know, was that, I don't know how deep that goes. You know, it's not Jim Crow South, but I'm like, was that a thing when she started working at this company? That's how long it's been, man. She was there for 40 years before the Berlin Wall dropped. Like, that's nuts. Don't hype up 94-year-olds working. That shouldn't happen. I have a grandmother who's 92, about to be 92. She should not be still working. No, that should not be a thing. I'm glad she's healthy enough to work. Don't get me wrong. And I'm sure at some point this became like something for her to do, but that's sad to me. If you're working in your 90s, it should be like daytime librarian volunteering at your local library.
If you're the queen of Texas barbecue.
Sure.
Tootsie at Snows.
Yeah, I definitely know. Yeah.
She's what, 91 now? There's a Netflix documentary about her. You should check it out.
Well, Willie Nelson's still working and he's 91.
That's true.
It's a little different. By the way, I finished the Zodiac Netflix doc. Did you watch that at all?
Not yet, but I plan to.
It's pretty good. I mean, have you seen the movie Zodiac?
Yeah.
Fincher movie? It's great. I love that movie. And the guy they're focusing on, Arthur Lee Allen, who Graysmith focuses on in the book too. That's who the documentary is about. So nothing like no new suspect, but it really goes into how it for sure was Arthur Lee Allen, like for sure. And there was this family that he ended up like endearing himself to. He was a single mom. I don't think they ever like got married or anything, but he was like one of the kids' teachers. And so he became like a family friend. He would take them on trips and stuff. And like one of the kids, he ended up actually just dying in the 70s, asked Arthur Lee Allen once, like, are you the Zodiac killer? And he was like, yes. And they went to all the spots like 50 years later where these murders happened. And they were like, the kids were like, we've all been here. Like, we've been to these spots. Like, one of them was a killing on a beach, and they were like at the beach with the guy. He ran off, came like hustling back 40 minutes later and was like, all right, we got to go. It's nuts. It's nuts. It was for sure this guy, Arthur Lee Allen, who died like 30 years ago, but like definitely was.
If you enjoyed that, did you watch Woman of the Hour?
No, that's what was recommended next. Which,
yeah.
I prefer miniseries, but I'll give it a go. That's about Don't Tell Me, the dating game.
Yes.
The dating game. Kid.
Yes.
I'm into that.
And Anna Kendrick stars and directs.
Okay, fine.
Okay. So
I don't know.
So the moral of the story is, if you're working into your 90s, so Tootsie is 89. So Tootsie Tominetz is the pit master at Snow's Barbecue and has been forever.
And like, she is cooking. I
So-
know there's a real art to it, but
so
like, she's doing
well,
art.
and they're open one day a week.
Yes.
So like
Okay.
one day a week you cook some barbecue, or what was the other thing you just mentioned? Willie
Willie
Nelson.
Nelson,
If you're
yeah.
making art, music,
Right. It's not answering emails all day.
right?
You know,
Art, music, cooking, those are good
that's good.
things to do.
I don't want to degrade what the process of making great Texas barbecue is, because it's work, but it's like, that's a fun thing to do. That's something you would do in retirement.
Right.
You know, you would become more of a pit master or do your own sauces or whatever. Like, that's a thing you would do as a retirement hobby. And it never gets into what position she had, this local news story. She works for like I don't know, like a trucking company, basically. So I'm like, that. Imagine if she like never got a promotion.
You know what I just remembered about Tootsie though? She's also the
Good movie.
she's a janitor at the local high school.
Really?
And at least-
where is this, by the way?
This is she's a janitor in Giddings,
Giddings.
which is about an hour and a half south of here,
Yeah.
and she cooks barbecue in Lexington, which is 15 minutes south of that.
Okay.
There's a
Janitor
Netflix doc.
thing's odd.
I'm gonna send you the
Maybe I'll
Netflix
watch it.
doc.
Maybe I'll watch it. Yeah. I'm getting back, foraying into Netflix again. It's just Netflix, I'm telling you, it just gives you like one or two good things a year at this point. And there's just so much overload of content. And I can't trust the top 10 anymore on Netflix. I saw this yesterday because like number 3 was The Lincoln Lawyer. You've seen that?
I haven't seen it, but
I
I've
watched
I've
a
seen it
f-
recommended. Yeah.
Well, I've seen a few of the episodes from season 1 when it first came out, and I was like laughing. I was like, this is fucking terrible. Like, this is so bad. And it hits like number 1, number 2, that like Virgin River. I watched a season of that. I was like, this is for dumb people. And that's what Netflix is for the most part. I'm trying to think of what is the good thing I watched on there this year. Like, I enjoyed the Zodiac thing. I wouldn't say it was like knockout. Like, there's one or two like really good things they put out a year. Like, I think about like the Queen's Gambit of a few years ago was just awesome. Like a great one-off series. But I don't remember what it was this year. I watched the Red Sox doc. That's how I got back into the Netflix homepage. I don't know.
So in other words, Netflix hits like Aaron Judge,
Pretty much.
about a .083 batting average.
much.
But when they hit, it hits, right?
Yeah, yeah. Once a year, it hits. I did watch, which I admit is kind of a dumb show, but I watched it anyway. It's like called Worst Roommate Ever, and it's just all stories about like roommates trying to kill people, or in some cases, killing people. And like that kind of fascinated me a little bit. That was on Netflix. But I'm talking like, again, that Queen's Gambit type, like that, usually one-off mini series. Haunting of Hill House was a good one. The first one they did. The second one was not great. And I think they even tried a third one. What would have been a great one was that show You, but then they dragged it into like 4 seasons, and by the end of the second season, it really wasn't hitting anymore. Anyway, that's a lot of Netflix talk. I wish I was watching more Netflix rather than the Bruins last night, because that we are hitting some brutal times, or we're really on the verge of it with this Bruins team. They get shut out by the Flyers, who were giving up 4.5 goals a game leading into this. They were the 4th worst defensive team in the league coming into this game. Actually, they were 3rd worst, now 4th worst, because they shut out the Bruins in Boston. Bruins go to 4-5-1. The only saving grace they had last night to keep it at 2-0 was Jonas Korpisalo, who their backup goalie made a couple of great saves in the early part of the game. And this is a team that just has just nothing. Like we were talking about last week with Matt Barry, who will be on tomorrow, about kind of the energy of this team. And why didn't they wake up and they come off a bad road trip and they don't give enough of an effort. And it's like, there's some effort problems, sure, but they just don't have any talent, really. Like, there's no talent on this team. And the way that the Bruins are going now, reminds me very much of the way the Patriots were going after Brady left, is that it wasn't just Brady. There was plenty of other talented players who had gone by then. In fact, they were really they did not have a ton of talent in that 2019 season, which was Brady's last. Even in that 2018 season when they won the Super Bowl, feels weird to say, but they didn't have a ton of talent on that team. And that's where the Bruins are at now. Like, their forwards are they're not good. They're not top end NHL players. They keep subtracting good NHL players and not adding any. And right now, Elias Lindholm is not doing it for them at all. And neither is Zadorov, by the way, he had 2 miscommunications last night. And I'm like, he's still 3 weeks into the season, is not, after a full training camp, is just not in the same place as some of these other players. And it's like, what are we doing here? But you just look down that roster. It's like, where is the real NHL talent? You have a bunch of guys who can play well on a third or fourth line, and they're playing on your second line. You know, I hate talking about this guy because I think he's a great inspiration for kids of the South Shore. He's from my area, but Charlie Coyle is not a second line center. He's just not. And he had a real good season last year, 60-point season, but he's not that. He's not that guy. He's proving it this year. He's 32. He's not putting pucks on goal. He's not scoring any points, and he's not winning faceoffs. What does he give you? Brad Marchand, we've already talked about it. I mean, he might just be done. He's 36. He's got 3 injuries he's battling through right now. You think he's just going to turn into a 60-point guy in like a month? That's what you're waiting for? You have one real talented forward on this team, one, and it's Pastrnak. And as you watch these games, you'll notice that the coaching staff and the players know that too, because they will do anything to force feed Pastrnak the puck. Their whole offensive strategy is just get it to Pastrnak any way we can. I get you got to have roles on a team, but there can be more than one goal scorer. And I almost feel for Pastrnak at this point. He's not playing very well, but it's like, is he supposed to be everything? Is he supposed to be the entire offense for this team? Watch a power play and tell me they're not trying to force feed Pastrnak. And speaking of watching power plays, I'm getting real sick of watching Charlie McAvoy quarterback this power play. I mean, the guy, he gave it away 4 times last night. Gave basically a 2-on-1 and a breakaway on a power play opportunity early in the game. They don't cash in on a 5-on-3. And this is a year plus of this, by the way. This is not just a couple of weeks of bad power play. They were horrid on the power play last year. They were the worst power play team in the playoffs last year. And Charlie McAvoy was quarterbacking it the whole time. And the only reason I can think of is because he's getting $9.5 million per year on the cap hit. I think he's actually getting even more than that this year, just on his salary. But that is the reason why Charlie McAvoy is still the quarterback of this power play, because of $9.5 million going into his bank account every year. But he's realistically not that guy, and has not been that guy under Jim Montgomery. His game has not been as good as what it was under Bruce Cassidy. And yet you remember they put Shattenkirk, they were scratching forwards just to get Shattenkirk into the lineup last year in the playoffs so he could play a couple of minutes a game so that he could quarterback the power play. And yet you go into this season and like, nope, McAvoy's our guy. I mean, Lindholm is quarterbacking the second unit better, and that second unit power play is fucking terrible too. And it's like, when do you just give Lowry a chance here? I mean, you were even last week rolling Lindholm and Lowry on a power play unit because those are your puck handlers. Those are the guys who can pass the puck and make some plays. And instead, it's just McAvoy every time. And I mean, it's either giving the puck to the other team or doing whatever you can to get it to Pastrnak. That's the power play. And sometimes that's happening at the same time. He's trying to get it to Pasta for that one-timer, and it's not getting there. And that's all they've got. That's all the assistants are drawing up on the iPads. And there is a lot of this on the players, but I think you are marching towards the end of Jim Montgomery here, because the longer this goes on, the more heat's going to go on Don Sweeney. And so with that being said, I think that means you're even closer to a firing of the coach than you are to a firing of the GM. I was never a huge Montgomery guy. Of course, I swallowed it up when they were setting the wins record in his first year. I'm like, okay, maybe there's something here. But I just never liked his strategy. And I said it going into that postseason. I was like, look, the Bruins are too good. They're probably going to go to the Cup final. But it worries me that they get outshot every night. Lo and behold, they get outshot pretty much all the games of that 7-game series, and they're out in the first round. And they should have been out in the first round again last year. But this team is regressing under this head coach. And if you want to say it's the players, if you want to say it's the management, you want to say it's the head coach, I'll take any of those three options. I think none of them have clean hands here, because we talk about them getting rid of guys or letting guys walk and not replacing them with NHL caliber. That's not necessarily on the coach. That's on the general manager. And I thought Sweeney was on a good little run up until last year. A guy who I was skeptical of at first, and I'm skeptical again. I mean, you're at the point where less than a year and a half after you set the wins record, you've got your fans saying, boy, can we please sign Tyler Johnson and get him on this roster? What is Tyler Johnson going to bring you? Nothing against the guy, but you think that's going to elevate your team? You know who he's playing for right now? Nobody. You're signing him off the street. 32 teams have passed on him. And you're like, that's what's going to make the Boston Bruins a playoff team. Because right now, they're not a playoff team. And we kind of saw it with rose-colored glasses. I certainly did. Once you sign Swayman, all right, you're back in the playoff picture because you got good enough goaltending. You don't. Your goaltending's fine, but you don't have a good enough team to make the playoffs. Like, I don't know if they're good. I don't know if they're better than Ottawa. And Montreal's still trying to figure it out a little bit with that young core. And maybe they're just too young, but they're a more exciting team than the Bruins are right now. Offensively, anyway, like this is just a team without any skill. So whether the effort's there or not, they don't have any skill. They don't have guys who can put the puck in the net, man. Like that's a big issue here. If you can believe it, you do need to score goals to win games. Scotty, I know you're not a huge hockey guy, but let me let you in on a little secret. You do need to score to win hockey games. So the Bruins gave themselves no chance to win that game last night. You know why? They didn't score. Didn't score a single goal.
I know enough about sports generally to understand
it's not golf.
The objective is to score more than the opponent. Yes.
We do need to tell Pete, I think cross country does have a lower score wins.
That's true. That's true.
I think that might be true. Pete's calling cross country. We should ask him about that today. But in hockey, you do need to score goals to win games, and the Bruins cannot do that. They don't have any skill. And really going into this season, your skill guys were Pastrnak, Marchand, and Lindholm. Elias Lindholm. Lindholm's giving you nothing. Marchand's probably done. And now you're down to Pastrnak, and it's just give Pastrnak the puck in any opportunity possible. And it brings me back to that clip, which we didn't end up using last week, but that alt cast with Raycroft, Bergeron, and Tuukka. And it's just this simple chip in that goes wrong, simple pass ahead to the blue line that goes wrong. And and all three of them just like wince at the same time, like not trying to say how shit this team is. But they are a Pastrnak injury away from being a lottery team, because the team they played last night, that's a lottery team going on like 4 or 5 years now with Philadelphia, and they shut you out. Like I don't know. I don't know how this gets better. I don't know what they can shuck and jive and move some guys. I don't think so. And honestly, I think the only thing that kind of makes it better this year is a new coach. I really do. I don't. The knock on Bruce Cassidy was that he had one line. Oh, he would just roll with one line. One line does all their scoring. With Jim Montgomery, it's one player. That's it. That's all they have. They have one guy with legit offensive skill. And he's not playing all that well right now, but even when he does, like everyone can key on him. The reason you brought in Elias Lindholm was because it was too easy to defend against the Bruins, especially on a power play, because the only guy that was any kind of threat was Pastrnak. And maybe you bring in Lindholm, who can, bring in some of the playmaking ability that Bergeron had that opened some things up, and he doesn't do it. He has not done it once. He's been dreadful this year. This team has nowhere to go, and there's like no one that's going to come in and save them. And that's why I'm thinking you might need a change at head coach to at least just light a fire under their ass. And it does go back to letting Cassidy go and bringing in Jim Montgomery. By the way, Elias Lindholm, 5 points in 8 games and a -3. Yeah, that's 7.75 a year. Sorry, 10 games, 5 points. He's on pace to score 40 points, which is great. That's what you gave up in Jake DeBrusk. He had about 50. That's what you gave up in Jake DeBrusk. You're paying this guy way more. That's what you've got. But it does go back to this head coaching thing. They had lost in that 7-game series to Carolina in 2022. They didn't know exactly what their goaltending situation was going to be, who was going to be the starter. And it felt like the end of that core, which in reality, it kind of was. I know they had a great year the next year, but then you go out and get Jim Montgomery, who's, a glorified college coach. He coached a little bit with Dallas, but his real success had come in college. He comes in here to be a player's coach because Bruce Cassidy was so mean to the veterans. And Jim Montgomery comes in here. He's so nice. And lo and behold, 2 years later, you have got, an aging core of veterans who are not giving enough effort night in, night out, and don't have any talent. But at least he's nice to the guys. They suck, but at least Jim Montgomery is nice to them. And that's where I'm kind of like, if you fired Montgomery and brought in someone, there's a chance to be a spark, but I don't know who that guy is, because what the Bruins really need is a hard ass. They need a hard ass to come in here, an old school guy, and not take any shit from anybody. I brought up the stat last week of when they fired Pat Burns in 2000. Also, like 7 games into the season, they fired him. And they brought in Mike Keenan, which obviously was a mistake. That guy's a psychopath. But Pat Burns was an old school guy, and I think got the most out of that young core. And what really that was in the early 2000s was we didn't draft very well outside of the Thornton Samsonov picks when we had 2 top 10 picks in 97. That, to me, is what that was. But you look at the way that Florida has elevated their game, or, there's guys still out there, right? Paul Maurice and Craig Berube and John Tortorella, who you saw last night. Lindy Ruff is still coaching. They're not all hits, but that is the kind of guy the Bruins need. I'm sorry. They need a hard ass there. And it's really too bad that at the same time that you were looking for a coach, you went out and got a college coach in Jim Montgomery. The Florida Panthers, who had just won the President's Trophy, went out and got Paul Maurice. Paul Maurice has won the Stanley Cup. Oh, and who won the Stanley Cup the year before he did? Bruce Cassidy. And we're sitting here with our thumbs up our asses, just happy to get out of the first round and thanking God that you still got Pasternak, because outside of that, you have fucking nothing. This team is 1 injury away from being a complete bottom-out lottery team. And with all that capital that you've given up the last few years, it does not get better next year. It probably doesn't get much better the year after that. The Bruins probably need to bottom out. And they need a hard ass to come in and coach them. What's Claude up to? Honestly, at this point, they're a defensive team. They're supposed to be a defensive team. The strength is their defensemen and their goaltending, and they play with 0 defensive structure. Their penalty kill has not been good this year. Their power play is even worse. And they just don't have nothing. They don't have the structure to win 2-1, 1-0, as you're seeing. Anyway, we had an interesting moment in the World Series last night, and I think a really interesting, funny quote from our guy Joe Mazzulla, which we'll get to in the next segment on the Cam Show, powered by Rogue Media Sports Network.
Nobody tells our stories better than our clients.
The difference is stark. I was rear-ended at a stop. I thought I was fine, and then once I got home, I realized it's a lot worse than I thought. I ended up having a ruptured disc. You say you're not hurting, and then an hour later, you're saying you're in all this pain. I just felt like most people would think that I was lying. That's when I decided to call Daniel Stark. I owe a lot to Daniel Stark. They really got me what I deserved.
The difference is Stark.
We definitely love our relationship and love Extraco. It's been an amazing experience.
They made the PPP process easier. They were reaching out to me saying, what can I do to help you? That made a huge difference because my stress level when we shut down to afterwards was night and day.
Our experience with Extraco has been phenomenal since the very beginning, so we love Extraco.
Welcome to a special edition of the Doomsday Podcast. Look at this. We got one of the great golfers in the world, certainly one of the great pass rushers in NFL history.
But he also had a vision for you. And so it was like you had the best of both worlds, right? You had somebody on you early, and then you had somebody who was maybe
More relaxed. What were a couple of your biggest takeaways? The first thing you referred to that I've spoken to some personnel people and general managers of the league to get some, independent, objective assessments of the players the Cowboys picked, and we'll go through that. Has the general manager changed at all in the draft room?
Nope, it's been the same since I was here the last time.
Cam Show, Rogue Media Sports Network. Pete Souza's coming on next segment. I know it's a bunch of fun for Scotty. Scotty loves those Pete segments. Loves them. The Bruins suck. I'm gonna watch every game because I'm a fucking sicko, but they suck. And it's honestly making me rethink whether I want to spend $250 on that Centennial jersey. We'll see. I'm a glutton for punishment, so I watch the Bruins. But as I told you the other day, Scotty, I can't not watch the Celtics anymore. Not that I was wanting to anyway, but the league pass, I had to get the league pass. I was like, I gotta do this, man. I love watching this team. I do love this coach, Mazzulla. I really do. I do wonder when the Celtics, when this thing kind of runs out, Mazzulla's still the coach and they're not winning serially. They're not winning, they're not the best team in the league. Does the Mazzulla thing get old? It probably will, like the things he says in the media. But right now it's fun and I like it. And he was on 98.5 yesterday, shortly after this show ended. And I think I got the alert as I was getting ready for Pete's show. And they had Joe Mazzulla on, and they were asking about rule changes because Nick Wright wants to change the rules. The Celtics are too good. So they pitched this idea to Mazzulla. If you could change the rules of the NBA, what would one of those rule change or two of those rule changes be?
We've been kicking around some proposed rule changes in the league. I
love this.
What do you got? You have some proposals?
Come on. Yeah, basketball is one of the only sports that doesn't have a power play. And I think soccer just put in the blue card where a guy has to go off and it's 10 on 9. And so, we should have a power play where, because let's say you get a technical or let's say you get a take foul, you get the one shot, but you're not really rewarded for that because if you miss it, you don't get the reward for the take foul. You know what I mean? So there should be a power play where on a take foul, on a technical, you have to play 5-on-4 for 5 seconds or 3 passes.
Or charge. Or what about for an entire possession? What if for the entire possession it's 5-on-4?
Yeah. I mean, that might be a little extreme, but I think we should institute power plays where instead of taking the ball out on the side, you commit a foul, the guy goes to the other side of half court, and he can't leave the half court circle until 3 seconds.
Oh, I love this.
The biggest thing that we rob people of from an entertainment standpoint is you can't fight anymore. We should just bring back fighting.
I mean, I'm not against that. I'm not against those days in the NBA.
What's more, I mean, you want to talk about robbing the league of entertainment. What's more entertaining than a little scuffle?
I agree.
How come in baseball they're allowed to clear the benches? How come in hockey they're allowed to? I don't understand.
Hockey,
don't tell me
actually let them go for a while. How much is hard fouls in the sport? I mean, even if it doesn't rise to the level of fighting, there's no. You don't have the hard fouls anymore. You don't have the fear of going inside. You don't have the fear of some of the other of the opponents.
Yeah. I just don't get why some sports are allowed to clear the benches They have bats and weapons. We don't. We just have a ball.
No kidding.
It's fair.
Joe,
yeah.
I mean,
the other sport has like one of the hardest surface playing instruments and a puck and sticks, and yet we're not allowed to throw.
Oh, I got this tangled up. By the way, I want to apologize to the fans. I could not find a soundbite that didn't have that ridiculous fucking music in the background. What was that? That was on a radio show. What if we just started playing ambient elevator music in the background?
I could work on that if you want me to.
Interview with the head coach of the Celtics. So he wants a power play in there. I find that very interesting because he said, and I love the way he put it out there. The take foul, we get the one shot, but we don't. That's not really hindering teams from doing that. At the end of a game, I guess, is what they were really going for. But yeah, have someone stay on the other side of half court for 5 seconds or 10 seconds or wherever it was, and then he can go back in when the power play is done. I think that's fascinating. But the one, of course, the Joe Mazzulla answer in there, the most Joe Mazzulla answer that he could have possibly gave for what rule change do you want? Let's bring back fighting. Fisticuffs in the NBA. It's been a long time. I don't think it was ever allowed, but it did used to happen. And hockey, it is technically still allowed. Baseball, again, not really allowed, but it happens. But basketball, we have wiped it out entirely. Would you like to see fighting back in the NBA, Scotty?
I think you could have some serious mismatches.
Sure.
In this case.
Sure.
Like, think about how big some of those wings are now and how small some of those guards can be. Like, what happens when, some point guard tries to get in LeBron's face and now we're allowed to fight? Buyer
beware. Buyer beware. The other thing, too, which kind of puts a wrinkle into this, it's the only sport where you have fans right there on the court.
Right. Like, right? Was it Russell Westbrook that went up into the stands a few years back and got in trouble? Who was that went up into the stands and got into it with some fans?
Westbrook was I think calling people out. Like he was, it wasn't like a Malice at the Palace kind of deal, but I think he was up there.
There was someone in the last 5 years who went up. Pete, do you remember who that was that went up in there?
No, I think it was Russell Westbrook.
Pete's an NBA PR guy. He wants to keep the shield clean. He thinks it's Russell Westbrook too. But I'm into it, man. In the 80s, you used to have that. And it was because the game was tougher, I think, more than anything. And they mentioned that in there. Let's ease up on the fouls in the paint a little bit. Let's get some hard fouls in there. That changes the game a bit. That sends a message. I think it's perfectly Joe Mazzulla that he's let's get some fighting back. Tatum is a big guy. He's 6'9". He's filled his body out. Is he going to fight though? Who's going to be the fighters? That might give a second life to Draymond Green's career. If they did that, would he become an enforcer in the NHL? Would he get a couple of one-year contracts just so he can muck it up with some guys? A former basically max player is going to start being a goon on his team. I think that could work. And what if that gives careers to these guys the way it did in the 70s and the 80s? Pete, do you remember who the guy was who knocked out Tomjanovich? Kermit Washington. That's the name. I was thinking about that the last 3 minutes. And it ruined his career in some ways. Yeah. And Rudy T. Yeah. And it was just kind of one of those unfortunate ones. Fights happened back then. Very rarely does it split a guy's skull open. You know what I mean? That does not happen a lot. But the NBA had a bad image problem back then. And so they needed to get rid of fighting. If you bring it back today, the NBA is massive. The NBA is comfortably in second place. NFL, no one's ever going to touch that monster. It's a pretty good gap. It's the NBA. And then it's a pretty good gap, right? I guess you put football, because college football would be obviously massive too. I don't think you're going to ruin your popularity if you're the NBA if you allow that to happen. That's me personally. Maybe I'm off base on that. Third, I think is in terms of pro sports is baseball, and you're seeing that with the World Series. Obviously, the numbers are the numbers. The ratings have not been great the last few years. Everyone said it was because it was Texas versus Arizona. Well, I don't think the numbers are going to be all that great. And there's not a lot of juice surrounding a New York, LA World Series. There's just not. But the Yankees do get the win last night. 2024 is the year of the gentleman's sweep. So I think that was very classy of the Dodgers to do that. Let them get one in front of their home fans. And there's a moment early in this game where Mookie Betts makes a great catch. And in some ways, the Yankee fans are still the Yankee fans.
Fly to right by Torres. Betts in the corner. Does he have room? Fights with the fan. And they're going to say that it's an out and fan interference. So an out, one gone in this first. It's the second time that Gleyber Torres has hit a ball that has ended up in fan interference in this series. He had the home run turned into a double back at Dodger Stadium. And yeah, Betts has that ball in his glove, and this fan literally tries to take his glove off. Pries the ball out of there. A for effort.
Well, he won't be watching the game much longer.
Wow, he might just from a TV. We're going to be watching us on the TV.
Have you ever seen a bigger group of douchebags in your entire life than the ones wrestling the ball out of Mookie Betts' glove right there? Is it funny? Kind of. Yeah, I mean, let's not take it too seriously. I don't think Mookie Betts was going to get hurt on that play, but that is ridiculous, man. Like, the ball is in his glove. They're trying to pry it out. And then the other guy, somehow you have two people on the same wavelength here. They must be some sort of brothers. I don't know. Some guy also pulling Mookie Betts' hand out of it. Man, these fucking people, man. I hate these people. They're the worst group of people you've ever met in your life. They root for the New York Yankees. And what's worse is I see this on Twitter afterwards. Jesse Rogers from ESPN has a picture with this guy, like out at a bar, like after the game. So I guess he posted bail pretty quickly. He goes, "Meet Austin Capobianco," if you can believe that. The fan that interfered with Mookie. I was talking to him at a local bar when a bunch of other fans asked him to take a pic with him and for his autograph. He was a beaut. Story up soon at ESPN. This is a quote from the guy. "If it's in our area, we're gonna D up." Like, this is some Black Mirror shit. Like, that should not be encouraged. And yet he's literally going to write a story about him on ESPN? This douchebag? This fucking tool? Are you kidding me? This fucking tool bag who paid $2,000 to sit there to rip the ball out of Mookie Betts' glove. Like, that guy should spend the night in prison. Like, that, I'm sorry. Like, we should, like, think about what you did a little bit. That's not cool. And now we're making a fucking story about him. And again, does it get too serious? Maybe at times. But this guy, this Red Sox fan, at Wally Eats Cats, quote tweeted it and said, and he's totally right about this. If this happened in Boston, there would be a whole conversation that the fan was racist because Mookie's black. But because it's in New York, the fan gets a whole article just glorifying it. He's 1,000% right. And by the way, if it happens in Philly, it's like, again, these are the worst sports fans on the planet. They're fucking criminals, yada, yada. Kind of the same things I'm saying about the Yankees, but not ESPN, apparently. Because look at how cool this guy is. Oh, he's taking pictures, signing autographs. By the way, it's the same fan base that had this like sold out bar during game 2 on Saturday night, just cheering to the nth degree when Shohei Ohtani is on the ground hurt. Like, fuck these fucking people. Of course I'm not rooting for this team. Fuck these guys, man. I keep saying it's not too serious, and I'm taking it too serious, I think. But like that's, it's just not, like, it's not cool, man. These guys with their fucking sunglasses on at 9 p.m. at night. Fucking losers, man. Absolute losers. And credit to Mookie, by the way, for not freaking out. Like, I would have lost my shit. I might have taken a swipe at the guy. Like, genuinely. If I'm right there. And what a fucking loser, man. You know who I thought of right away when I saw that? Steve Bartman. My man Steve Bartman has not come out of fucking hiding for 20 years after that thing at Wrigley Field in the 03 NLCS. The poor guy. The Cubs have won the World Series since then, and still he got harassed for years. And this guy gets an ESPN story written about him. It's like, Bartman is trying to catch a foul ball. Like, he's actually got to play on it more than Moises Alou does. and Mookie has made the catch. It's over. It's done. And they're ripping his glove apart to try to get the ball out. Fucking douchebags. And I love their argument to the umpires, like, no. It's like, brother, we do have instant replay. Like there was zero way you were getting away with this, and it wasn't even bang bang. You literally had to have one of your paisans there grab Mookie's other free hand to make sure that you could use both hands to pry the baseball out of the glove. Fuck the Yankees, man. I hope they get their ass kicked tonight. Oh man. But yesterday I was saying they're soft. It's not the Bronx Zoo anymore. If that's what the Bronx Zoo is going to be. I mean, at the end of the day, the old Yankee Stadium, the House of Pain, was just filled with 60,000 of the worst fucking people you've ever met in your life. And I guess this qualifies. So I'm trying not to be a hypocrite here, but let's go Dodgers, man. Let's go Dodgers. We've got Pete Souza coming up next.
Nobody tells our stories better than our clients.
The difference is stark. I was rear-ended at 70 miles an hour. I was injured, had a concussion. The insurance company, they delayed. They were playing games from the initial conversation. They weren't going to help me. The biggest thing I learned through this is that you can't go through this alone. I called Daniel Stark. They were going to help me, and everything was going to be all right. Daniel Stark got me 10 times the insurance company offered.
The difference is stark.
We definitely love our relationship and love Extraco. It's been an amazing experience.
They made the PPP process easier. They were reaching out to me saying, what can I do to help you? That made a huge difference because my stress level, when we shut down to afterwards, was night and day.
Our experience with Extraco has been phenomenal since the very beginning, so we love Extraco.
It is Matt Mosley, and it's the Obstructed View podcast, Rogue Media Network. I think they're learning that there's really no wonderful view of me. See, I feel like they think this feed's going to be really wonderful.
There must have been no BS, like 20 scouts, 15 to 20 NBA scouts there to see him, and he was top 5.
When your old number wasn't working, I went through various channels to track you down. So unfortunately, you can never get away from me. But I'm happy. Man. I'm happy to have you today.
No, thanks for having me. And you know we always family, no matter where I'm at.
I mean, yeah, a new coach comes in, they're going to turn the roster. I think that's just we've got all these transfer portal stats and what Dion did and what Fritz has done. I mean, that's the deal, man. That's the game that's being played nowadays.
Maybe a little bit unknown at quarterback. I mean, unknown to the rest of the world, but you know, he dove into the portal and got a guy who is super, super athletic.
South Dakota State's really good. Give us a little bit of breakdown about what they can do and what Oklahoma State needs to be worried about.
But look at that form right there. I need to say nothing else about this because I found one.
Bringing the heat? No, sir. We're bringing the Pete. Pete, the meat Souza.
Just a little bit.
What was the problem with it? Does it wash it out completely?
No. I think it was for more of the other interviews we do.
Oh, okay.
Watch this.
Pete, I'll let you do whatever you want, man.
Yeah.
Give us more of that on camera.
What?
Nothing. This one's for the ladies.
I mean, this is real life. There you go.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now
Pete Souza.
So Cam, how we doing, bud?
Yeah, I've got a big thing that I got to do after the show, so I have a negative attitude about it.
You're getting a car.
Potentially. Can you knock on some wood if you're going to say that shit? This guy sounded pretty hollow up there, Pete. I don't know. Yeah, we're going to try it today. Honda Pilot, which is, love a Honda. Hondas are great. And it's the size car that I'm looking for. I thought I was going to have to go a little smaller. What?
I have a bad memory with the Honda Pilot.
Fuck. About the car, or was it like?
No, the car was great.
Okay.
I almost got killed in one. driving 95 south on my spring break towards the Florida Keys.
Okay, so this is 25 years ago.
It's a little bit ago, Cam.
Yeah.
And a woman driving
This is a 2019 Honda Pilot.
A woman driving north fell asleep at the wheel, went over the median, and hit us in the side. Like, we were a bunch of college kids. We
That's
did nothing
frightening.
wrong. Dude, we flipped like 3 times.
Bunch of college kids on spring break.
Yeah. My buddy who was driving the car, Matt Midget, was thrown from the car on his back, like skidded across I-95. I was unharmed in the middle. I was fine. McShay went to the hospital. My buddy Matt Davis was there. He went to the hospital. Yeah, a bunch of us were pretty screwed up. But
damn, McShay
everybody was okay. I mean, like Matt, my buddy Matt.
Did you like continue the spring break?
No, it was over
Okay,
after that.
okay.
Yeah. But here's God opening another door for you. By the way, everybody was fine. So what did I do? I went to, because I was a student radio guy that called the Richmond games on the radio station. Now, we weren't able to call the games because it was during spring break, so there was really no outlet for us, but we did have credentials. So I went to the MCI Center at the time in Washington, D.C., and saw Baylor upset South Carolina in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And then the next day they lost to Washington.
Baylor did?
No, Baylor. Sorry, Richmond.
Oh, I was like, wait a minute. They didn't make the tournament. Oh.
Yeah. So Richmond did, yeah. And
Nice,
remember now,
man.
I was a kid. I was really hitting it hard. So I would go up to this lounge in the MCI Center and just drink vodka shots.
Hell yes.
And I would go down and sit
Pete.
courtside.
I don't take this the wrong way, but I wish we could have seen Party Pete. I know it went too far, and
Yeah. No, it was fun.
I wish we could have seen. Mosley will fucking have an aneurysm if you heard me say that. Could have seen like Party Pete, just like without the consequences happening.
Yeah, sure.
You know, not
sure.
like we don't
No.
see them. We
Yeah, I was. Yeah, it was fun. A lot of it was fun before it wasn't any all.
Yeah,
at
no, I
all
get it.
anymore.
It's kind of how these stories go, right?
But yeah, I was sitting next. God, I would like to find. So that okay, I got a good one for you.
Please.
So in between,
By all means.
in between the games. So Thursday was a game, right? Friday day off. Like Thursday were a bunch of games at the MCI Center. Friday day off, Saturday games again. So I don't think I was drinking for this part, but in between days, we actually went to practice, me and Adam Wilimowski, the guy who was actually on the show the other day. And I asked Bobby Knight a question. Now, I was so nervous to ask him the question.
This is right at the end, right?
Well, yeah, 97, 96, 97.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's gone by like 2000.
This is probably 98. So it's 98. Yeah. So I asked him a question. I was dying to ask him a question. So I asked him what I thought was a pretty good question, but I was so in my head about asking him the question that the person before me had asked the question. So I remember he just stared. He's like, if you were listening to my last answer, I was like, yeah.
What was more terrifying? The car crash or asking Bobby Knight that question?
I was way more nervous. The anticipation to ask Bob Knight the question was terrifying. And last thing on that, Richmond lost to Washington and a soft-handed center named Todd McCullough. Gary Bender was their coach. Washington was. They were good, the Huskies. And I remember I was drinking and I was sitting next to some guy who was Oklahoma was in the tournament. And I
hate OU, right?
Well, this
Those
poor
Okies, man.
This poor bastard, or he's probably, who knows, he might be a columnist somewhere now. He's a little older. He was there just to write a story, and I was just just talking.
I understand. I get it, sir.
Yeah.
I understand what you're coming from. So speaking of Bobby Knight, did you see the picture I sent you the other night of some of my toys that came in the mail?
No.
Well, I sent it to you. No big deal. So I got off eBay this week.
Let me see.
2 vinyl records. One of them is the play-by-play. It's called The Avengers. It's the play-by-play highlights of the 1972 Stanley Cup champion Boston Bruins. And the other is
send it to me, dude.
Not to be denied, the season record of the 1984 Celtics. And I love these old Celtics ones specifically because it's Johnny Most narrating the season. And Glenn Ordway, who became a longtime, really famous sports talk guy in Boston. And it takes you through the whole season. And it's like going from the end of the season before to the free agent or the trades, the new coach. And it was the year that KC took over as coach.
Jones.
Yeah. And Ordway is narrating it. And he's talking about will, the speculation, will Red go outside of the family again? Talks of Bobby Knight. And I was like, could you imagine?
Whoa!
Could you imagine Bobby Knight coaching the Celtics and Larry Bird?
He's Bobby Knight.
It would have been a disaster. By the way,
he knew himself better.
It would have been a disaster.
He knew himself better than that.
Robert Parrish would have quit basketball, I think. Like they were done with Bill Fitch. That was the whole thing, is they ran Fitch out of town because he was too much of a hard ass. And KC was coming in as like a truly,
let me ask you something,
players coach.
But the Celtics history was.
Yeah.
Let's go. I've never gotten an answer for this, probably because I've never asked a question.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? Like, Boston, you look at it as a predominantly white town, whether it is or it isn't. And I always thought that it was kind of cool that Casey Jones was the head coach of that team, because when you look at the Celtics, a lot of times it was like, oh, they got the white guys or whatever, but they had this stoic coach who had this great mystique. He wasn't a man of many words, at least for the media.
Yeah.
What was, what does your father say about that? Some of the memories from there.
Yeah, and I will say they also had the first black coach in NBA history, and the first all-black starting
Bill
five
Russell?
in NBA history. Yep. And I think the thought with the KC years was it was Larry Bird. Like, that was the intrigue. And I don't have a great comparison for it, other than if the Patriots had Tom Brady and Todd Bowles was their coach. You know what I mean? Like, it was all about Larry Bird. They loved KC in Boston because he had won a bunch of titles with them as a player, and it was the Celtic way, the tradition, like that, all that Celtic pride stuff. Like, he emulated it. Like, he really gave a shit. And he was one of those who was kind of, laid back, but could throw some jabs at the media here and there. Like, he could be self-deprecating at times too. So in that sense, it was kind of the perfect guy in that, like, he had a team of characters. They won a lot. He wasn't afraid to call the team out when they weren't playing well, but neither were the players. Neither was Larry Bird. So, he was kind of like a stoic puppet master, so to speak.
Okay.
You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to think of a
he
good
was
example.
As you indicated, he was a total players coach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the best comparison you would find is probably in baseball, of that players manager kind of thing, of like never too high, never too low, which you don't necessarily see in football or even basketball at times. You don't see a lot of hard asses, especially nowadays in baseball, just because it's such a long season. It's tough to be a hard ass that much of the season.
Yeah.
So it's more like that. I'm trying to think of it. Dusty Baker.
Okay.
Dusty was really accomplished, longtime manager, had played the game, very successful as a player. Again, wasn't going to call his guys out necessarily, but could be a hard ass if you needed him to be. I think Dusty would be, of the last few years with Houston, bringing them to a championship, be a good Bochy, Rangers guy. That'd be another one. I mean, Bochy could be another one too. That's what he was like. But I think also it was, obviously you hear it a lot now, but it was kind of well known back then. It wasn't like KC was the greatest tactician in the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He wasn't revolutionizing the game, but they didn't need him to be.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I mean, there's, Red Auerbach was not necessarily changing the game in terms of his tactics. A little bit. In the early days, especially when he got Russell, they were the first team that did this thing called defense in the NBA. Like they were like, you know what we could do? We can win championships by being the best defensive team in the league. So that was a big change. But kind of after that, it was defense, fast break. Not a lot of X's and O's to it.
Okay.
KC, man.
KC.
The late Casey Jones.
How about
not
the
Mike's
World-
friend.
No.
There's a friend named Casey Jones, not him.
How about the World Series?
How about the World Series, man? Were you surprised the Yankees won one?
Nope. And I'm not going to be surprised when they win again tonight.
When they win again tonight.
When
Kermit on the mound.
The only problem for the Yankees is the way that the series and it sets up, and the way that it has for so long is that it's 2-3-2. If I believe if there was an opportunity to take a breath and go back to, I think that the Yankees could push it to 7. I do.
Flaherty against Cole tonight.
Yeah.
Cole was really good in that first
What are
game.
they? Were you just looking at the?
Just the pitching matchup.
Who's the what are the odds in the game?
I don't have the line here.
Okay.
I don't even know how to do betting in baseball, to be totally honest with you.
You bet on
I'm no Pete
pitchers.
Rose.
You bet on pitchers. That's pretty much it.
Is it?
I don't know if you still do it that way today, though, because of the way the pitchers are with the pitch count and stuff. But when I was growing up and I started to bet, that was always you ride a pitcher, and that was it. And a lot of times you eat the odds. Like if you're going to bet Randy Johnson, you're giving up a couple runs, or if you do the money line, obviously you're going from a deficit.
Cole has a ham start left in him. Cole has a blow up left in him. And that would worry me as a Yankee fan. It shouldn't. And he's got 2 ERA. He pitched really well against this lineup in game 1. But with the postseason success he has had, there's been 1 or 2 blow ups every time.
I'm going to say right here,
Same.
What I said on this show yesterday was, and I again did not invent this little theory, but it was said yesterday. I heard it said multiple times after I left here, was that documentary that had just illustrated the Red Sox coming from behind down 3-0 was something that people within the Yankees organization and around them were talking about. And now here we are. And last night you felt the roof come off that place. There is a belief behind this Yankee organization and team that they are very good. And my question really is, how good are the Dodgers, right? Like you have to, like, at the end of the day, like if the other team's way better than you, then you can't beat them.
Mm-hmm.
If it comes down to, can we find a way to win 3 more in a row? Well, the Yankees can do that, but it really is just how good are the Dodgers?
Can the Yankees do it without Aaron Judge?
Well, I mean, it's not like he's hurt.
I know, but does he need to really come alive?
100%. The Yankees, without Aaron Judge hitting, the Yankees are, I mean, that was another thing too. I'm not an expert, but I like to read the experts, and I know the history of the game. And the Yankees without Aaron Judge scoring, that's just not how they're going to win. Like without Aaron Judge hitting, he's got to get some hits and got to get some big hits. But last night, they got the Italian kid from the Bronx playing well.
Yeah. Oh God. We've had a couple in the last decade or so of local guys either coming up or Cole had the sign, and it's like that's been the Yankees fans thinking here it is. It's one of us. Finally, this is our new Jeter. Even though he wasn't, he was
off
a
the top of my head. I don't know.
I think Volpe's from New Jersey.
Forgive me. I know we've had guys like Kyle Lowry's on the Sixers now. He's a legendary Philly player. But I think if I think of Philly bred, playing at home for a home team, I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, but the first guy that comes to mind is Vince Papale.
Yeah. I mean, Boston hasn't had many. There's
Yeah.
only been a handful of Massachusetts guys who play for the Celtics. And I know you don't think of Mass as a total hotbed, but they have guys in the NBA all the time.
I mean, Wilt Chamberlain played for the Sixers was one, but Wilt
Wilt
was ours, but then he was everyone's.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, that's a good way.
Literally
to put it.
everyone's.
Well, yeah, at least 20,000. Is Kareem a New York guy?
No. Well,
I mean, he was LA
he
for
is.
years and
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Would Magic have played for the Pistons?
But at least Wilt did play for the Sixers.
Yes.
The Warriors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Best Boston athlete to play for a Boston team. Oh, there's got to be an obvious one I'm missing.
Chris Herron played for the Celtics.
Did play for the Celtics.
He had a
He's
cup
one of
of
the. He's
coffee
one of the
with the
few.
Celts.
He is
Yeah.
one of the few. You
Yeah.
remember that story of him leaving warmups? Did you ever do anything with Chris Herron?
I've tried.
Okay.
I've tried. And I can say that 13 years ago, right before I got sober, his documentary had just come out at this time. And so he was making the rounds talking about being 3 years sober. I remember thinking maybe I can do this right before I went to rehab. Yeah.
You are the Yankees, and that was your Red Sox documentary. Except I'm rooting for this to happen. Herron is, by the way, a legend in Massachusetts.
Yeah. Dude.
High school.
He went
and
to
that was
Durfee
the
High.
Durfee, was the that was the program in Massachusetts. The Durfee Hilltoppers.
Fall River Dreams.
Yep. 2,000 points in high school. I mean,
his brother Michael was
a good player. He actually won championships. Yep.
And
What's funny is the last 2 years of Chris Herron in high school, they're arch rivals, one state, both times, New Bedford.
Oh, really?
They had a kid who went to the University of Maine, and he was third in the nation in scoring. I'm blanking on his name. It'll come to me at some point. But yeah, he was an absolute legend. Like if you're talking all-time high school basketball players, Massachusetts, like Chris Herron is up there with Patrick Ewing and Ramil Robinson.
Well, I remember him in that Sports Illustrated.
And Ron Perry.
And who else?
Ron Perry. Ron Perry Sr. actually just died last week. He won a national championship in baseball and basketball at Holy Cross. Yeah.
He's no Gordy Lockbaum.
No, I mean, one more championships than Gordy Lockbaum.
Gordy
Lockbaum did not
Lockbaum-
get the Heisman hype that Gordy Lockbaum did.
Gordy Lockbaum, two more things. Gordy Lockbaum had a
And by the way, Ron Perry's son was the last guy cut from the 81 Celtics, which won the title. And it became like world famous because when he was cut, Larry Bird was like, he should have had a spot on this team. Yeah. Anyway, Gordy Lockbaum.
When Villanova ESPN started to do Thursday Night Football, Villanova had just moved up to, I think, 1AA. And they played Holy Cross on a Thursday night at home on ESPN, main ESPN.
Wow.
And Lockbaum just went off. And speaking of Durfee, Massachusetts, a teammate of mine from Richmond,
Durfee High, yeah.
Mark Megna, he went to Durfee High with Herron. Mark played for the Patriots for a little bit.
Did he? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
He would say Souza. He met my dad once. He said, Mr. Souza.
Mr.
And my dad was
Souza.
like, yeah. He's like, you guys have your own phone book in Durfee. All the Portuguese.
Yes.
Souza.
Yes. So this is real quick because we got to go out, and it's probably not going to mean anything to you, but I like to talk about it. Durfee High, New Bedford, and Brockton. They're all pretty big schools, but there were other big schools, and they were like so good at everything that they like wouldn't land in a conference. So they just played in the big three as independents and who would win the big three. Like cool kind of lore to it. But Durfee's won like 10 state championships. They have not been good in a long time, unfortunately. And neither of the other two, to be honest with you. But Brockton was Brockton at one point in 88, I want to say. They were the preseason #1 high school football team in the country. It will never happen in Massachusetts again. I'm not kidding.
Was Peter McNeely from Brockton?
Yes.
The guy who fought Tyson? Yeah, he was.
Brockton has two of the best fighters of all time. Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
Yes.
And the only undefeated heavyweight champion of the world, the Brockton blockbuster, Rocky Marciano. Oh, I love Rocky Marciano, man. I got a picture of him. God, we're running this long.
Let's go. You have a picture of him down there? Why is it down there?
Because I don't have a frame for it, so I can't hang it up behind it.
Wow.
It is
Ted
Rocky
Williams?
Marciano with Ted Williams, if you can see past the glare.
Wow.
It's one of my favorite things that I own.
Yeah, knock the dust off that.
It's so awesome, man.
Yeah.
I read a great book about Rocky Marciano last year. You should read it. I don't have it to give it to you anymore. But
That's
you should
all right.
read
I'm
it.
an audiobook guy.
It's great. So shout out to Brockton, New Bedford, and Durfee High School, 2,000 point scorer. Skip Karam at Fall River, Massachusetts. Thanks, Pete. We'll see you at 1 o'clock on the Pete Souza Show. We'll be back here high noon tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central Time.
Can't wait. One thing.
It's Pete. It's Pete. Okay. Oh, Jesus Christ.
We're going to be talking about horror movies. Like the best on my show, we're going to be talking about the best horror movie characters and what athletes they compare with.
I've got one for you. Left-handed specialist reliever, 2004 Red Sox, Mike Myers. Anyway, we'll see you back here tomorrow.
You are here with your shoot first point guard, Corey Dickman.
Also, if you're not creating new fans in a small market, then you're not creating that base of people to go to games and pay for merchandise and pay for stuff and concessions at the Moda Center and yada yada.
Yeah, let's talk draft. That's the only thing we have to look forward to.
The only thing we have to look forward to. That's what I will teach my son. You will teach your daughter as Blazers fans. It's like, look, the two most exciting times of the year for us are the draft lottery and the draft itself. Like, here we are. This is our thing. Give me some memories and thoughts. I know you had mentioned kind of the first time you had met Bill. What were some of those first memories that came back when you heard the news?
Coming up on the Pete Souza Show, Rogue Media and ESPN's own King McClure talks to us about the NBA draft.
Team is
Are you
banged up
getting
a bit.
undressed while we're doing this?
No.
What is happening?
And it's partially because the team has like pretty kind
Wrong
of big problems.
podcast, Nick. Wrong podcast. When you're a golfer, what is the point of no return? He was the best play-by-play announcer around, in my opinion, and he made me want to continue to watch.
We definitely love our relationship and love Extraco. It's been an amazing experience.
They made the PPP process easier. They were reaching out to me saying, what can I do to help you? That made a huge difference because my stress level, when we shut down, to afterwards was night and day.
Our experience with Extraco has been phenomenal since the very beginning, so we love Extraco.
Nobody tells our stories better than our clients.
The difference is stark. I was rear-ended at a stop. I thought I was fine, and then once I got home, I realized it's a lot worse than I thought. I ended up having a ruptured disc. You say you're not hurting, and then an hour later, you're saying you're in all this pain. I just felt like most people would think that I was lying. That's when I decided to call Daniel Stark. I owe a lot to Daniel Stark. They really got me what I deserved.
The difference is stark.
We are Rogue Media Sports.